How do you look at PR within the discipline of marketing? Because it is like super different.
Yeah. The metrics that we use are different. Sometimes the objectives that we try to achieve are also different, because PR is ultimately all about building trust. I always say PR works like SEO. You need to like invest in it and let it do its magic. Like the compound effect is what ultimately makes a difference.
What are the top misconceptions that people have about PR?
For a lot of CEOs, this is a new concept, to not have control over a narrative when you're used to having the control over your website, your blog, your this, your that, your pitch deck. All of a sudden, like, you lose that control, and then that creates anxiety.
We're releasing this fucking boring thing that no one gives a shit about, but let's just send the press release to fucking CNN. It's like, why would they talk about this? It's boring. No one cares. Like, oh, we've just released a feature that 15 other companies already have. Who cares?
Some people think that they look at the day after the release has been published and look at, okay, what are the results? How many leads did I get? I'm like, no. Like, that's not how it works. You're building authority, you're building presence.
All right, we're back for another episode of Grow with the Flow. Today, we are joined by Matías Rodsevich. Mati.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we just found out in the intro that I've been in my head mispronouncing his surname for, 4 years, 5 years. Although I've never had to say it out loud. So all good. But thanks again for joining us.
It's just Mati.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
And it is Mati's company, PRLab, I'm going to introduce you in a second, that has been so kind as to provide us with this space for the podcast. So as always, shout out to PRLab for the generosity and the support. And as a quick introduction, Mati, you are the founder of PRLab. PRLab, I have my notes here, described as, well, you guys are just a leading PR agency. You focus on basically tech companies, and you help them leverage PR to elevate their brand. And you previously did PR for Impraise. You worked with companies like Bomberbot, and essentially your job over the last, 5+ years has been helping B2B tech companies kind of put themselves on the map, get the awareness, get out there.
And I think also put PR on the map. It's not just the companies, but I think it's also PR itself.
Correct. Yeah. Well said.
So we always start the same way. Tell us about your origin story. How did you get here? Go back as far as you like.
Okay. Well, I started working in 2 PR agencies for 2 big tech giants. So my first client was IBM, and my second client was Google. And I wasn't sure if that was my cup of tea, let's say, like the corporate sector. So when I moved to the Netherlands, I started working at Impraise. I was one startup, and then I realized that I really enjoyed working for startups, kind of like a fast-paced environment where decisions can be made quickly and it's quite flat, and there's not much red tape and so on. So that's the space that I found that was like a good fit for me and my personality. And then afterwards, indeed, I joined Bomberbot, and then I joined a gaming company. And at one point, because I created a community of PR professionals here in the Netherlands while I was at Impraise called PRLab, the PRLab community, I started getting some clients out of it. And then at one point, I decided to create PRLab Hub, that is the agency. That's cool. The story. Yeah.
What brought you to PR in the first place?
So my story is quite different to typically you hear from people thinking like, saying like, I never thought I was going to be working in this field. For me, I always knew PR was my thing. I studied PR at university. It was a very specialized bachelor PR. And I always liked the idea of like proactively shaping the perception of someone or something, and working with public opinion, and the strategic aspect of it, that is about basically understanding how you want to position yourself and being able to mold and shape how people think about you. And I really like that. Yeah. So that's how I ended up in PR.
Yeah, it's cool when people have that vision early on of what they want to do and they just go and do it. That's always very respectable. You're from Argentina. How did you get from Argentina to being in the Netherlands?
Oh, funny. I just literally came to visit a friend of mine that was studying in Amsterdam once we finished our studies, because I did part of my bachelor's in Australia. So she moved to the Netherlands to do an exchange program. And because I have a European passport, like many Argentinians do, I decided to come visit her. And I really liked Amsterdam, so I ended up staying. And that's the story. It's been almost 9 years ago.
Oh,
Time
wow.
flies, huh? Time flies.
Did you always want to leave Argentina, or was it just
Ye-
like
Yeah, I think so. I always knew it wasn't my country. Like, as in, like, I really liked. It's a beautiful. You guys been there, so it's a beautiful country. People are so nice, but it's also so far away from everything. Even when you want to travel within the country, it takes you like 3 hours, on like flying just to get from one point of the country to the other. So I always found that a bit frustrating. The fact that it's so isolated, so far away. So also it's a very empty country. Like, we're not that many people. Uh, so I always wanted to be in a place where there's like a lot of cultures and people from all different backgrounds and so on. So that's why I left the country, not because I needed to leave, but because I genuinely wanted to live somewhere that is a bit more international, better connected. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also, I mean, obviously Argentina is particularly far away, but I also had that feeling always that I lived on the periphery of kind of the startup tech scene, all the newest innovations and newest inventions that we'd get them way later.
Yeah.
I grew up in Hungary, moved there in the late 90s. So I often relate to people 5 to 10 years older than me when we talk about computer and devices when we were kids growing up, because we were just behind. And there was definitely an aspect for me as well. Like, Amsterdam is in the thick of it, and it's not London, so I don't want to go to London. I don't want to go to Paris. I don't want to go to Berlin. Like, Amsterdam was a good fit there. But interesting that that you just kind of came here and just stayed. That's
Yeah, and for the people that never been to Amsterdam, Amsterdam is, at least how I would describe it, it's like a very well-known city, kind of like very international, kind of like an international tech hub. But at the same time, it feels like a village because you can cycle everywhere. Like, you don't need to take, if you live within the ring, you don't need to take the metro or the tram. So it's great because it really gives you that village vibes that I was missing in Buenos Aires. It's also like a huge city, and I had to take the subway
almost
everywhere.
can't compare Amsterdam to Buenos Aires?
No, exactly.
It's a different league.
But that's why when I arrived here, I was like, oh my gosh, this city has so much going on, but at the same time, it feels like a village.
I always say Amsterdam has this thing where Amsterdam itself is quite small, right? 800,000 people. Well, I'm sure there'll be people like, well, technically it's around 800,000, under a million.
Yeah.
But you're in the middle of the Randstad, which is just this economic, cultural powerhouse. We got, we got the third biggest airport in Europe. We got the biggest port in Europe. We got the European Stock Exchange in Amsterdam. So you have cities like Rotterdam, Utrecht, Amsterdam, The Hague. They're all in this. It's just this kind of like hub of opportunity. Yeah. But then you have like your little pocket. And even within Amsterdam, people have their pockets and they don't leave their district or their neighborhood much. So it is that perfect balance. But even here, you meet people who go like, "Ooh, Amsterdam is too busy. It's too hectic. It's too many people," which I feel sometimes. But I think
it's just a lot of tourists because everybody loves to come to Amsterdam. Apart from the tourists, I think it's actually not that many people. It's really nice. It's just the center. But if you stay out of the center,
exactly,
with regards to your life, then I think you're fine.
I agree.
Yeah, it's cool being at the forefront of things happening. You see things in the news and then you see them on the street. They were like, when Tesla first came out, you saw Teslas in the street. If you were living in, like I said, growing up in Budapest, you saw Tesla on the news. You'd see the first Tesla maybe 8 years later on the street. So being in the thick of it is definitely nice. Let's talk a bit about PR, because this is a topic that I find super interesting, because it's one of those things where it's one of the few areas where when you're dealing with founders, high-paced environments, high expectations, most things you do in marketing, there's deliverables and there's the results from those deliverables. And the results from deliverables in PR are very important, but it's one of the few areas where the deliverables are particularly difficult, but founders are very often happy with the deliverables. What I mean by this is, if you want to create a beautiful report about something and you create this white paper, they don't actually care how good the white paper is. They'll care about how many leads did it generate and how many deals could you get out of it. Whereas if you get your CEO onto, I don't know,
Forbes,
TechCrunch, Forbes, whatever, that they don't even care about the results as much as just getting featured.
Yeah.
How do you look at, this is not clear. How do you look at marketing? How do you look at PR within the discipline of marketing? Because it is like super different.
Yeah. I do feel like, in a sense, it's part of, it's all kind of like part of the same thing, but at the same time it's very different, because like the metrics that we use are different, and the sometimes the objectives that we try to achieve are also different, because PR is ultimately all about building trust, and we use media relations as a way to build trust. But also, a lot of people think PR is only media relations, but that's not true. We also do public affairs, we do crisis management. Sometimes even PR teams are the ones in charge of social media and content creation. So it's very intertwined. But I would say like the biggest difference is that by nature there are two fundamental different things, because marketing mainly works with your own and paid channels, whereas PR works with earned media channels, right? So it's all about the endorsements, like building the trust with stakeholders and get them to endorse us and benefiting from those endorsements. Like, for example, a feature on TechCrunch. Why do founders care so much about that? Well, because there's so many benefits that come from it. Like you get exposure in front of investors. You can get new clients. You can also get new talent out of it. There are so many benefits of being featured regularly in the press.
And there's an ego factor as well, right?
Exactly.
Which is not a bad thing, but
Yeah.
like there's also the factor of I got featured on TechCrunch. Like
Yes.
it's almost
Mhm.
it's almost sometimes almost an end in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing, because what I noticed as well, like in my previous company at Bud, we worked a lot with PR because fintech is massive PR backed.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that I think everybody is aware of the ego factor, and that the publication in itself is just great because it builds brand, it builds awareness, it builds validation.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, what they don't indeed realize is that it opens so many doors. Because we actually did one really big announcement with Google, that we used their platform for our technology, and they said, let's do a joint PR release.
Yeah.
That just opened so many doors, I think, without even realizing how many doors, because it was, you went to a conference and they were like, oh, I saw your CEO in this, and I saw this there, and this. And I think a lot of the times, and that's something that I want to get to, because we've spoken a lot about this together, is that, and I think that's very relatable to anything in marketing that's harder to measure, is that internal story of the importance of PR and putting money there, because these indirect effects is almost like creating demand. You don't know how to create demand. So how did you figure that out? Like, how do you talk to your customers and building that network of like, hey, PR is important. You need to put the money in there, and why?
So I think we're in a very lucky position, because all of our clients come to us. Like, we only do inbound marketing, so they know most of the times why do they want to do PR, why is PR important. However, there's always many misunderstandings around how it works. So that's one thing, especially I would say in B2B tech. That's like definitely where it's one of the most challenging environments to really get these founders to understand that PR, I always say PR works like SEO. You need to like invest in it and let it do its magic. Like the compound effect is what ultimately makes a difference, not just one press release. But they get anxiety sometimes from seeing their competitors in the media. And actually, this is one of the things that I hear really often. Actually, yesterday as well, talking with a company, it's like, I'm like, why do we want to do PR right now? It's like, yeah, because our competitors are featuring the press and we are not. So it's that FOMO.
Well, that could be a great, if you guys ever wanted to do outbound, you just track a bunch of companies in a space.
Yeah.
And once you see one featured, you go to all their competitors and be like, have you seen that they just got featured? We can get you there too.
But I think the only
You guys
thing,
don't sound like you need it, but if you ever do,
I do think with PR, and that's interesting because we also spoke about this. It's like a lot of people just do PR for the sake of it, but they don't have anything to share.
True.
And I think PR is only very valid when, like, you see, for example, product features, updates. They don't really do anything in PR land. Whereas if you have something to really say, or you have a brand to stand next to, but otherwise, you see a lot of people doing PR, and then you're like, this is a great article, but it's not PR.
No, true. And that's why I also, on that note, I typically ask all of our clients at the beginning, like, okay, what are your business goals at the moment? And, we try to match those with PR, because they like, awareness is also a very general term. right? Like I can get awareness in a certain industry, I can get awareness in a certain community, in a certain country, like awareness is very broad. So I typically try to go a step beyond awareness to understand what do you really want to get. Like are you fundraising? Like we can help you with that. Like are you looking into increasing your domain authority? We can help you with that. Do you want to expand into a new market? We can help you with that. So we try to also narrow down a little bit of like their expectations and also the concrete goals, because that's when we start also showing the more concrete value. For example, one of our clients is fundraising, and we're basically focused on all the PR that we do should be aimed at getting them visibility in front of investors. And then one of the KPIs that we use is like, okay, how many investors are reaching out to you, out of PR, and I remember recently we got them one article, I think it was at the Financial Times, and they got approached by 3 different investors that want to start conversations. So that's a concrete way of showing how PR works. The issue is that sometimes the metrics can feel so far out. Like brand recall, for example, great metric. You look at how much of the conversation you're owning, but if you don't see value in it, then you're going to feel like it's not for you. So it's important to understand, okay, what are my concrete business goals I want to achieve with PR, and based on that, selecting the right metrics. But I don't want to be the typical marketing metrics, and that's also important to keep in mind. It's like we are like cousins, we are part of the same family, but also we are quite different,
Yeah, because
In my opinion, it shouldn't be though. I think we are the same. I think the problem is that people see PR as something different, but it's part of your marketing.
Yes and no, because for example, this is an interesting conversation, because for example, the way you would write content for your blog is fundamentally different than the content
I
that we
agree.
write,
I
right?
agree.
So there are some differences because the audiences that we speak to are by nature different. Like we
Yes.
typically speak to journalists, whereas maybe a content marketer that creates content for a blog speaks to target audiences and like potential customers. So the tone of voice, the narrative they're going to use are very different, right?
I agree. For me, it's more like you focus on you try to achieve the same thing.
Yes.
So I agree with you. The audience is different. The type of content, the type of writing, a lot of the time is very different.
Yes.
But it's another touch point.
Yes.
And I think that is, and especially a validation touch point.
True.
And I think what I see is a problem when I would work with a lot of founders, and I think you've experienced that even way more than we have, is they don't see it as part of your marketing strategy.
Yes.
And it should be, in my opinion, part of your marketing strategy.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, it's all a matter of perspective. I also see the downside of that, which is I see a lot of marketing teams just kind of throw PR on the end of the things that they're doing, and it doesn't work that way.
No,
So I
it should
think
be
in terms of
included.
but I think they're like PR is almost kind of like business development or partnerships, which they serve the same. They have the same goals as marketing, right? It's to generate demand, to generate leads. They have very similar goals. There's huge amount of overlap, and I think these teams that are all about generating awareness and turning that awareness into concrete business opportunities, those teams all need to work together. They all need to toe the same line. They all need to share similar goals. But I guess from a process and resource perspective, it almost is better, whether it's outside or inside marketing, I guess that doesn't really matter, but to very clearly define, okay, this is what we want to put into PR, which brings me to the question, which is, we touched upon this. What are the top misconceptions that people have about PR?
I'm laughing because this is like my day to day, basically. Many people think PR is all about your network, who you know, and they still think that way. We actually, it's so funny because we recently got a client telling us like, "Oh, we hire you guys because we thought you had a network," and I'm like, "Dude, like." It was never about the network, and this is what I tell my clients from early on when they're like, which editors do you know? I'm like, we know a lot, but that's not something that we're going to sell to you, because the editor, like, even if I know them and have them on my WhatsApp and I go for drinks with them, if the story is not relevant for his audience, they're not going to cover it, period. Because that's their job is to add value to an audience, so who I know, it doesn't matter. What matters is my capacity to get you featured in the media and the outlets that you want to get featured on, We're not the mafia, that is all who we know and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? So that's, I think, the top misconception around PR. And then the other one is that one press release, that PR is a press release. First of all, a lot of people think PR is a press release, uh, and also that we control journalists. We control what a journalist is going to publish. We control whether they can take an article down or change the, put in a link or change the title or add a photo, or like, journalists are independent people. They do whatever they want. We can naturally try to influence them, but we're third party reliant. When you do something that is third party reliant, you have very little control, and I think because for a lot of CEOs, this is a new concepts, to not have control over a narrative when you're used to having the control over your website, your blog, your this, your that, your pitch deck. All of a sudden, like, you lose that control, and then that creates anxiety, of like, oh, I'm not in control, like, I can't control this. And then they go crazy, and then they get really scared, and many people think, oh, PR is not for me because they have one bad experience, well, welcome to business world, not all publicity is going to be good publicity. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's life. So there are a lot of misconceptions also around turnarounds and how long it takes to bring in results, because people don't really understand that there's a ramp up period. Every publication, podcast, even like this episode is not going to go out today, right? Most probably it's going to be, I don't know, in a few weeks, a month, a few months. It's the same with any publication, any podcast, any blogger, any influencer you work with. There is time in between they approve your story until they featured it,
Unless it's breaking news.
Unless it's breaking news, indeed. But even then, sometimes they don't cover the press release, and then they want to do like a follow-up story in a few weeks because their editorial calendar is full, or they are covering an event, and then the timing is not right. So that is one thing to keep in mind. It's like, it's not instant, it takes time, and also the results most of the times come after you get the coverage, So some people think that they look at the day after the release has been published and look at, okay, what are the results? How many leads did I get? I'm like, no. Like, that's not how it works. You're building authority, you're building presence. So yeah, it's a long-term game.
Okay.
Over the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, I'm not a PR person. I'm not a PR specialist.
Oh, you're really good at it. I've seen you doing it. You're really good.
Well, I appreciate that. I think the thing that I learned is the number one thing that helps you get press is doing something that's worthy of getting press.
Yes.
And I think that is the thing that I always struggled with, is founders going like, we're releasing this fucking boring thing that no one gives a shit about.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just send the press release to fucking CNN. It's like, why would they talk about this? It's boring. No one cares. Like, oh, we've just released a feature that 15 other companies already have. Who cares? Yeah. And I think that's like the struggles I always had was like, do something worthy of PR. Like when we were 3D Hubs, the number one PR thing we ever did, and it wasn't intended as a PR campaign at all, is when COVID hit, we manufactured ventilators and masks. We got a bunch of our suppliers to do ventilators and masks for hospitals that were running out. It was not a PR campaign, but then it just got covered. We did it together with a handful of other organizations, and it got massive coverage.
I remember. And
it's really doing something. And I guess that's I'm curious about your view, because yes, I think nobody will deny that doing crazy PR worthy things, if your CEO saves a child from a burning building, it'll probably get press, but that's not a strategy. That goes quite deep into PR stunt territory.
Yes.
It's a fine line between that. So how do you balance that with, how do you turn PR from this kind of sporadic thing where founders just want to send a press release when they do something that they think is interesting, but probably nobody else does, to here's a strategic way that we approach PR, and this is how we will get regular coverage over a period of time?
Yeah, this is, I love this question because I have so much to say about this. What you just said about founders pushing stories on features, that happens all the time, and that comes from the understanding that you need to have news to share to be able to do PR. That, in my opinion, is like a myth. It's a PR myth. We typically say in PR that PR needs PR, because PR needs its own PR, because a lot of people don't understand what PR is and how it works. So they think, oh, I'm only going to approach the media when I have an announcement. But the reality is, like, most companies don't have many announcements happening in 1 year. Sometimes you don't even have an announcement in a full year, like a newsworthy announcement, let's say like that. I always say PR is not about like being relevant one point in time. It's about staying relevant, right? So it's all about creating news, creating stories instead of distributing stories, because that's where also, I mean, anybody can distribute news. Like you don't even need to hire me to distribute your news. You can do it yourself. Simple. Anybody can distribute news. The question is, how can I stay relevant? And that's when the rules of the game change, because it's all about the long-term positioning, but also the short-term results, right? So how we work with our clients is we have KPIs. Those KPI, we are a results-driven agency. So we don't bill our clients per hour. We don't do those things of like, oh, you get 3 hours of a junior and 5 hours of a senior. No, we are like, okay, what are the results that you want to achieve per month? Okay, like what is first of all, what is your business goal? Then, okay, we translate that into KPIs, PR KPIs. Like, okay, how many pieces of coverage you're going to get per month? In what type of outlets? What type of domain authority? What demographics? How many backlinks? How much content I'm going to create for you? Where are we going to place that content? Like, are we going to do data research or not? Okay, all those things. And then we look at the long-term metrics as well. And how can we grow that over time? Like, okay, your share of voice. How do you want it to be in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year from now? Your traffic, your referral traffic, and things like that. That we break that all down. We put it in KPIs. And then what happens in between is basically what sets us apart. How creative we are to get you those results. Because we tell our clients, we don't need you to give us news. We will make sure that you get featured in the media. How do we do that? Well, that's when we actually implement different PR tactics to make that happen. But press releases, most of our clients rarely have one. We do a lot of newsjacking, for example. I don't know if I should explain what newsjacking is.
Please tell us about it.
Newsjacking is basically monitoring the media on a weekly basis, identifying stories that relate to you, to your ICPs, and jumping on those stories by providing like an opinion or some data or content and so on. So to basically get seize that momentum and get attention for your brand.
Can you give an example of how you guys did this? Because obviously, I think anybody out there who wants to do this properly, they should go to you guys, PRLab Hub, and have you guys do it for them, because it's a ton of work to do this in the long run. But let's say somebody's a founder, early stage, can't really afford any external help, but just wants to like try a little bit. Like, how could they? I think newsjacking feels like a very tangible entry point for people.
Anybody can do newsjacking. Yeah, for sure. So, for example, one of our clients, I'm going to give you a concrete example from 2 weeks ago. When we started working with this client, we interviewed the CEO to really understand what is your opinion, what are your thoughts in the world that you're in your industry. Like, for example, if I would interview you guys about growth marketing, what are the things that how do you guys think about growth marketing? What are the things that you like, the things that you don't agree with, and so on. So when we did that, we figured out that the founder was very opinionated about AI and offshoring of employees. So there was we saw a story about how AI was going to help brands hire remotely, and then we knew that he didn't agree with that. So we newsjacked that story by providing a different take on how it's actually not going to happen or not going to help.
Do you then have the contact person just happen to have that, or do you just reach out and find out who wrote it, and you just reach out and say, hey,
we reach out, and naturally, because we work with companies that are in clean tech, fintech, medtech, biotech. Those are our biggest field, blockchain and crypto. Naturally, we're not going to have like so many contacts,
But they're all disruptive, though, most of them, in one form or way.
Indeed, but the media that we reach out to is typically
very traditional.
Different. Yeah, different from each other. Like what a medtech journalist covers is very different than what a blockchain journalist will cover. So what I'm saying is, as long as the story adds value and it's relevant for them and it meets one of the elements of newsworthiness, then they're going to pay attention to it, but you need to pitch it in a way that is appealing to the journalist, and at the right time. So it's all about also taking advantage of that momentum.
So this is then, sorry. So I have one question about this specifically.
Go.
In this case, was the article then already published and then you reached out and they made an addition to it?
No, it was not an article from the same journalist. So it was we found the story in an outlet. I don't remember which outlet it was, and then we found journalists that would be interested in talking about this. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
so yeah, typically if the journalists already covered the topic, there are very low chances that they will cover it again. So it's all about finding journalists alike that haven't covered it, but they typically are in that section,
Yeah.
or like they covered that kind of like set of topics, and reach out to them and offering them like a take or an insights or an opinion and so on, and to help them build the story. So this is also one fundamental thing about PR, is that rarely we are the story. Most of the times we're part of the story,
Yeah.
you know, and this is really important to keep that in mind. Like rarely we get a full article about ourselves, you know. Most of the times we're going to be a main factor that contributes to the article, and that's okay. You still get the mention, and you still build the trust, you still sometimes get the backlink, you build the relationship with the journalist, you know. But we need to understand that like we are part of an ecosystem, you know. Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question more around like PRLabs as your company. So, you said already in the beginning, PR needs PR,
Yeah.
right? And I think your company has gone through a lot of ups and downs with how the market was doing, from COVID to crises to these kind of things. So, how did you make sure, or what was your thought process, or how you go at it with regards to, okay, I have this consultancy around PR, which when the times are not so well, it's sadly one of the first things that people don't want to invest money in. Like, how did you stay relevant and stay focused on, okay, we need to keep on growing or maintaining?
Yeah. And what you said about the ups and downs of the market, 100%. I think, yeah, we were. I don't know if I want to say lucky or unlucky. I don't know, but year one, COVID happened. We were only 1 year olds, you know, and then the economy went all the like it was super hyped, and then it crashed again in the tech field. So we've been through a whole roller coaster. Um, I do feel though that our um, brand essence is very different to most PR agencies, and I think that's what attracts most of our
And
clients.
why is that?
I think it's because we actually care about them. In essence, okay, it sounds very general, but what I mean is like we take the time to understand what the client wants to get out of PR instead of trying to put them in a bucket, you know, and just give them something that doesn't add value. And we also speak the language of tech, you know, like we are a tech PR firm. We only do B2B tech PR. Like we don't work with fashion companies or I don't know, soda drinks or whatever. Like no, we only do B2B tech, and that's because we really understand how this world operates and what these companies typically need to get to grow further. So we typically talk about growth in NPR, you know. So we have a very defined target group that wants to grow further with PR, and we are not trying to become like a PR empire and so on. We're just trying to do great work for them, you know. And I think clients really value that about working with us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that holistic approach almost, it's really understanding what role PR plays. And I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at the beginning when I said that very often PR is one of the few things that can get like founders and stakeholders happy as an end rather than a means to an end,
Yeah.
where you get published on a couple of articles and you feel good and you're like, oh yeah, this is cool. But actually those end results,
Yes.
they really matter.
Yes.
And I see this most when the big challenge always, especially when I was at companies like 3D Hubs, do we go after the niche publications where our audience is actually reading? Or do we try to get into something like Wired that our audience is definitely not reading,
Mhm.
but has maybe a little bit more prestige? And I guess that comes back down to the goals, right?
It comes down to the goals indeed. Like what are you trying to achieve? You know, like are you trying to be seen as an industry leader and get attention from investors or potential partners, or are you trying to create demand generation, you know, and you want to get new customers and clients out of it, you know? That will naturally determine the strategy that we're gonna set for you. And something that I wanted to add to that, because before I forget, so Yelene and I, we worked in the same company in different times, but still same company. And that we actually have
No,
a
we
few
did
months working
overlap.
together as
We
well. Yeah,
overlap.
when I came back,
Definitely
yeah.
overlap.
Uh, I see there the huge impact that PR has in an early stage company. Like we grew so fast and so much, not only because of PR naturally, but I'm gonna give you a concrete example. One time I pitched a story about us to um, a, a writer at Forbes. He was interested. He wrote about us, and thanks to that, we got our first big client. That was Adobe, and thanks to Adobe, then we got Dell, and thanks to and that we open, and the power of opening doors. You know what I mean? Like he endorsed us, and then that sparked the interest of a tech giant that we couldn't get at the time. Because we were only like
It's
seven
authority, it's
people.
trust,
Yeah,
it's
we were seven
100%.
people working in a small startup in somewhere in the pipe, like we were trying to wing it.
That creates a stamp of approval,
Yes,
and that's very important, I think,
yes, yeah.
especially for young new startups that don't have that validation yet.
It's all about building trust.
Yeah, and how do you think about it? Because so one of the things that is not my world at all, but one of the things I learned with like influencer marketing is that you have the really big celebrity level influencers,
Yeah.
and generally they have a massive audience.
Mm-hmm.
But if you manage to engage them, it'll be very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You get access to a massive audience, but generally they tend to engage less
Yeah.
with their followers.
Yeah.
In terms of what I mean is sometimes when you're trying to like get influencers involved, I mean, maybe even like this, like we always try to get interesting people onto the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but we also, of course, have one eye on what is this person's network like, because we grow the podcast largely through the network of our guests. In addition to all the other things we do,
Yeah.
is if we publish this and you share this, hopefully, then at least a handful of people will
Yeah.
listen and keep listening. And if we do this with every guest, after a while, that starts to grow, and then you get referrals and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And what we found is generally that it's not the guests with the biggest following
Yeah.
that have the biggest impact for us. It's very often the guests who have a really good following, maybe 10, 15,000 people, but have a very strong connection with their followers. They're not broadcasting 50 posts a week.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually just get way more attention.
Yeah.
So you might be going after a following of half,
Mm-hmm.
but you're engaging 10 times more with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I see influencer marketing as a similar dynamic where sometimes the medium-sized influencers maybe have less a following, but they're more niche, so they engage stronger. You see it in SEO, where sometimes long tail keywords have lower search volume, but they're more specific and they're less competitive. Does that same thing translate? All these things have in common this idea that it's always tempting to go after the biggest volume.
Yeah.
Do you have that in PR as well, or is it really just go for CNN because that's the biggest trust, or is it a legit strategy to go after a lot of regular smaller publications?
Yeah, it's very difficult to answer that question because again, it all comes down to what your goal is. Because if your goal is to build trust and to build a brand and build a name for yourself, naturally, like the most renowned outlets or renowned people backing you up is a sign of it will help you build trust. However, if what you're trying to do is do demand generation and get new clients and so on, rarely you're gonna find them in these big outlets. Like it's typically about the consistent adding value, and that's why we're specialized in B2B, because by nature B2C PR and B2B PR are very different. B2C PR is all about building the hype, and like the more the better, and like the metrics are huge, and it's all about
It's also business to consumer.
Exactly. Exactly. You're targeting consumers, so your audience is huge. It's all about the numbers and the clicks and the engagement. And B2B PR is a completely different thing. It's all about influencing the buyer journey, and sometimes that's in a breakfast with like 15 decision makers, and then you get way more results than out of getting featured in Forbes or whatever. Then maybe you get zero traction, so you need to understand where your audience is and also how you can add value, because ultimately the work that we do is about adding value to that audience so that they see us as a partner that they can trust, that they want to engage with, and ultimately they want to buy from. So it's all about the quality and how insightful we are, more than how we promote ourselves. Whether we do something cool in like a Cannes event, no, nobody cares. Unfortunately, in PR, in the B2B PR field. So yeah, it's less about being cool, but more about being helpful.
Yeah, and
Valuable.
so You've always been quite busy in your life, starting businesses, doing things on the side, hosting meetups. So there's one other big thing you chose to do was to write a book, PR Paradox.
Yes.
Look
Oh,
at
we have it
that.
here.
We have it here.
Let's hope that moving away. We have camera. Here we go. The PR paradox.
Can you share a little bit more about why you wanted to write a book, how that process
Yes.
was, would you do it again, and everything related to that?
So first context, this happened in 2020.
COVID.
As you know, I come from the other end of the world, so I was very far away from my family. I couldn't see my friends here. I was very single as well, so I had so much time in my hands. And I was like, either I binge watch Game of Thrones or I do something productive with my time. And I was like, you know what? I have so much to say about this, and I haven't found a book that really helped me, PR, especially in the early days of doing PR in a startup. So I was like, well, I'm going to create a book. I'm going to go ahead and do it myself. It's going to keep me busy, and it's also going to do something quite productive with my time. And it's also going to help me elevate my brand, my personal brand. So I went ahead and created a book, and I launched it at the end of that year. And yeah, it's still selling copies, so I'm very happy about that. I need to rewrite the whole thing because now I feel like there's so many things I would like to add or say in a different way. But that happens. I think I read from a lot of people that wrote books that it's very normal that you always find reasons not to publish it. So I set myself a very tight deadline. I was like, okay, I need to write one chapter every 2 weeks, and it's gonna be published no matter what, and then there's gonna be times for like new editions and so on. Otherwise you'll always,
But how did that apart from I
Mhm.
set a goal, like I think a lot of people in their head somewhere have like, I would love to write a book,
I
right?
have 25. Maybe it's exaggeration. I have like a dozen started books, which range from one sentence to 15 pages.
Right.
So I know what it's
How
like
did the
to not do
process
it.
go? But also, like, what was your experience with publishing it? Like, how
Oh,
did
yeah.
that go? Did you enjoy it? Was it hard?
So I got lucky because I found this platform that actually, I don't know if it still exists, but it's called Ingram Spark. And it's a platform where you can write your book, but you can also publish it. So they handle the whole publishing of your book. And then they also do the on-demand printing and shipping. So thanks to that
Wow.
platform, my book is now on Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Bol.com, all the stores. And every time someone buys a copy, they print it, ship it. I don't have to deal with the whole thing, So it's very great. However, the publishing industry is very old-fashioned, very slow, and you have to read all these contracts that you sign and so on. So that could be a little bit of very painful. But for me, when it comes to writing it, I used the reverse engineering process. So like I first built the index and like the topics that I wanted to cover, and most importantly, like what was the main key message per chapter, and then I built the content from that. So instead of like writing from 0 to 100, I first look at the outline, then key message per outline, and then created the rest basically. So that allowed me. But most importantly, I think it was about sticking to the deadline. I was like, okay, one chapter every 2 weeks, no matter what, So
What did it do for your personal brand? Because one of the things why you did it was for your personal brand.
yes, well, I managed to speak at a bunch of conferences thanks to it. I also noticed that, podcasts started to write me more thanks to that. And also, when it comes to selling our services, leads really like to receive a copy of your book, and they really like to see how different you think about other players and so on. So, if you're thinking of writing a book, do it. It's also really fun.
Maybe
I was just
It's fun.
trying to see how many pages you have in a chapter, but the whole book is over 200 pages. So it's
Yeah.
it's
Look at
a
it here with
it's
your
a mean
hands.
feat. It's a mean feat.
Also quite lucky that I have a team of writers proofreading my content. At the time, there was no AI,
Yeah.
but now there's so many tools, so many ways to do it.
Cool. We have another segment.
We do.
We'll move on to the next segment, which
Yes,
is
the time
I know,
limit.
you know what? I had one other question, but
Yes.
I didn't clear this with you before. So if this stays in, it means all good. Otherwise, we cut it out. But the changes in your role
Yes.
Is that something you're comfortable talking about, or is it still
Yes.
in the weeds?
Yeah. No, I'm definitely happy to talk about that.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be, I think, anyways, official by the time this comes out.
oh,
So
perfect. Yeah. So, naturally, like when you start your own business, as you both are very experienced in this, your role changes all the time. So when I created PRLab, first I was a freelancer, then I hired people, and then, but at the time I was still doing payroll and taxes and I don't know, hiring and also so on. Then at one point I managed to get a process, kind of like an operations person that stood taking care. I started to take care of more and more of different sides of the business, and now we're lucky enough to be in a position where I can fully hand over all the operations to that person, so I can focus on um, yeah, either starting something within the business or outside of the business. I'm not gonna say much, but yeah, I fully hand over all the operation now, all my whole operational involvement within PR now. So yeah,
how does that feel to hand over the reins
So your
scary.
baby.
after all this time?
Scary, really, really scary, ups and downs. I notice sometimes that I'm like, oh, let me do it. And no. And then, but I'm like, my team, what I really like about them is that they really hold me accountable to what I said I was going to do. They're like, you said you wanted to step back. What are you doing here? Go offline. We're going to remove you from this chat. We don't want you here. Like, they are very um, strict with me, and that helps me too.
And why do you decide to do it?
Well, I do feel like at one point, like as an entrepreneur, you want to learn new things and you want to also experiment with new things. And I feel like, yeah, I love my company and I think it's great. But at the same time, there's so many other things that I would like to do, that I didn't have the chance to focus on because I was busy paying the salaries of my people or jumping on intro calls with leads or making proposals. So, like, I feel like freeing up that time in my agenda is going to allow me to either focus on elevating the brand a bit more, or on maybe creating a new business line or a new product. So I need the time available first to devote to it. Otherwise, I'm always going to be busy,
Yeah, splitting
Yeah.
focus doesn't
Day-to-day
work.
gravity just pulls you down otherwise.
Yeah, and it's also, let's not forget that at one point your business becomes your comfort zone. So at this point, PR Lab is
I
my
love that
comfort
one.
zone. It's almost 6 years of doing this, so I kind of like know the drill of it. I know how to speak to leads, so I don't feel like I'm very challenged anymore. So I miss being challenged and putting myself into the unknown. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm mainly doing because I like being an entrepreneur. So yeah.
Exciting.
Just looking at the time, we
Fixed questions.
need to move on.
Yes.
So now we're going into the fixed questions. They're not long form. You can say, of course,
Mhm.
a little bit about it, but it's not the rapid fire questions yet. But we tried to keep this segment a bit shorter.
Cool.
So, what's a controversial opinion you have?
Ooh, controversial opinion. I have a bunch actually. Controversial opinion. I feel like there's a lot of psychopaths in tech. Founders. A lot of psychopaths.
Yeah, I do. I do have the feeling you need to be like, especially if some
Yeah.
of the companies and also take the risk and take the challenges. You need to be
Yes.
cut from a certain cloth
Yes.
in order to succeed. I agree with
I
that.
think there's a thin line between having a thick skin and having no empathy. So
Oh,
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
What's your biggest fail or favorite fail? Like if you look at your own,
Of myself.
yeah.
Um, so many relationships that failed. But not related to work.
Let's keep it to more.
Let's give it
work
more
related.
more related.
Otherwise, it's become a different kind of session.
um, well, definitely, I would say I, I I felt a few times I'm not giving either people the right chance, if you know what I mean. Like especially in the early days of the business when you are so committed to making it work and trying to control everything, I maybe failed to understand that some things need time and trial and error,
Yeah.
and giving people the proper room for them to really experiment and try things. So definitely that was one of my fails, but at the same time a learning. So
Most of
yeah,
the time, the biggest fails are the biggest learnings.
true.
Talking about learning, who do you learn from the most at the moment?
Well, actually, I don't know if this is gonna resonate with this podcast, but I do feel like I've been recently, because I'm stepping. I don't want to say stepping down, but I'm kind of like shifting gears and focusing on other things. I've been really working on letting go, like and trusting, and but like fully like letting go of the need to control, which is, as founders, I do feel like it's like a never-ending challenge that we have, especially when something comes from your brain and you're the only one, and then all of a sudden like you have 15 people, 20 people around you. I think being able to fully let go is really important. So I've been there's a book that I recently read that really helped me with this. There's the Untethered Soul. I really recommend it if you're thinking about letting go or trying to let go of your need to control. So definitely that's something that I've been, and that yeah has taught me a lot, and it helped me to sleep better at night and be more
Nice.
chill in general. So yeah.
Nice, that's a good one. Then last but not least in this section is, what's your favorite tool for 2024?
Tool.
Tool.
Well, I'm using a lot Perplexity AI for research.
This is not the first time we've heard
No,
purpose.
it's the second
No?
time we've heard
Oh,
this one.
okay.
No, but it's great. No,
No,
it's
it's good,
great.
it's good.
But it's for us, it's like
It's good, it's good.
it's an AI tool. It's a
Yes, it's an
it's
AI
like
tool.
a chat
It's like
competitor.
Like a better version of AI overviews on Google or something like that, or ChatGPT meets Google search kind of.
Yeah, and it's real time, and I think for research it works pretty well because it's real time research and it's kind of like on the web, and I like it. So yeah, I will definitely say that one.
Nice, cool.
Cool.
Facepalm and kudos of the week, or you want to
Is that
go
next
into?
week? Yes.
Yes,
Facepalm kudos
normally
of
it's
the week.
the
Yes.
facepalm.
Every week we mention a facepalm or a kudos
Yes.
or kudo,
Yeah.
and essentially calling out something we think is cool, something we think is lame, and as always, the guest goes first.
Okay. I would say facepalm definitely Bunk and how they're handling their crisis. I think
Yeah,
that's
I
a
just saw
massive.
that today.
Well, there's been a series of articles in the last month,
I've not
actually, or
seen
more.
this.
Mm.
There's been a big research conducted by two Dutch newspapers where they found that a lot of people got hacked and all their money stolen.
And employees got, all of their employees could get access to bank accounts, and they used
Yes.
it for personal use. So if they were
Yes.
dating somebody, they wanted to see if they had enough money on the bank, these kind of things.
Oh wow! Okay.
But I think to me the biggest facepalm is how they handle the crisis. You know, I would say maybe I'm looking at it from the PR perspective, but like I think they followed the manual, all the things that you should not do, and they were very late to react, and also very defensive and not showing any empathy to the victims. And I think they lost too many customers along the way. So facepalm, that one. And kudos to NVIDIA for the amazing work that they're doing on increasing their shareholder value by also doing PR in a really smart way, you know, and doing announcements right on time, aligned with AI events and so on. So I do feel like they're a great example of how to do PR well. But yeah, naturally, I mean, I just brought mine from a PR perspective, so I would
Which you
love to
should.
hear yours.
Yeah, for me, I had a kudo. Oh no, for me, kudos was I actually had two, but not. I wanted to talk about one of the people that were on the podcast was Hugo, and he started Ritmo, and we've spoken a little bit about Ritmo before. But what I really loved about it is that he thought like how you pronounce it is more Ritmo, but everybody pronounces it as Ritmo, and everybody has an association with cows. Which sometimes, like especially, I think all of us have been there. Like I work for a company called Bud, so I know all about how that feels. But what I loved about Hugo is that he's fully embracing the cows, and he
Yeah.
started to create content around cows and gifts and gifts. Sorry, these kind of things. So I really. I love that. Like if you get that thrown at you, just take it. My face bomb was actually a personal one. So in the Netherlands, we're quite developed as a country, but we still are not capable of creating air conditioning in the tram, which I'm baffled by. I'm like, why can't you fix that? Every car has air conditioning right now. Why not our tram? So, but that's more a personal one because for 20 minutes I was sweating like a pig. Which is not, before you get on a podcast, not something what you want to do. So
Definitely not.
Okay. I am drawing a blank. I think for one of the first times. My kudos will go to the Malaga Football Club, who they were once going to be like the new Man City, backed by all the big investors, and they got to the Europa League and it failed miserably, and they ended up getting relegated down to the third tier of Spanish football. That's pretty far down, and they just got promoted, and the party in Malaga was huge. I live in Malaga 5 months a year, so 4 months a year, so affinity there. And it was just cool to see everybody celebrating, and actually kind of like kudos to all the well-behaved football fans just causing a huge hype. The Dutch fans in Germany as well. All of that is really really awesome to see. And I have to come up with a facepalm. I've mentioned like 3 or 4 in the last 3 days, and in the midst of this heat, my brain is just completely pushed them out. What was I going to think about? I think one facepalm is I invested in a company that has been going through a tough time. They've been dealing with it really, really as well as they can. And I guess there's a kudo and a facepalm here, because the way that the founders are dealing with kind of like the challenges is awesome. And there was a session with all the investors, and they raised from a lot of people. Also, there's the formal VC type investors, and then there's the angels, and then there's the family friends faction. And I can only imagine how tough that is. When disappointing a VC is one thing, but disappointing family, friends, business colleagues, these kind of things. So I guess, like, in addition to my previous kudo, like, kudo to them for dealing with it as well as they can. But seeing how startups like that get treated on the market, when they're going out for funding, where they're going out for M&A, like, there is such a sharkish culture. And can't give any details about it, but just whenever I look under the hood of like this whole kind of VC backed game, when it goes really badly, it's a lot of horrible stories come out of it.
Which is horrible, because like the risk, especially as VCs, it's part of risk management. Is like you invest in so many startups because one of them will be successful and you will get your investment back. So it's part of the game, and they make you feel personally so bad. Which it's a business transaction. Like, stop.
So this happens a lot. Yeah, this happens a lot. In this case, it's not VCs that are causing the problem, but it's interesting to see how people deal with situations when they go not as expected. And it was just
especially with a high risk investment.
So it was interesting. But all in all, that's mine. I had it all locked up, and then I realized I can't give away enough to actually make this kudos worth talking about. But there we go. Always keep control of your company if you can. That's the most important thing. We also always have the segment where we ask a guest to describe a post. You have a series of posts that you've been sharing on LinkedIn. It'll be showing up here on the screen, and it's unmasking the PR spin. Tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea, and what the idea is behind it.
Yeah, well, I always found it very fascinating how some companies can get really far by just like building a house of cards, like for example the Theranos case, how she built the whole company and became like a multi-billionaire, I think, by basically following that Silicon Valley ethos of fake it until you make it, and but at the same time the idea of unmasking the PR spins to actually dissect how some organizations got really far by leveraging different PR tactics and how to use them well in their favor, because I feel like we typically look at case studies from a perspective of a company that is quite doing something great and quite successful and quite positive. So we learn only from those, but we can also learn a lot from the ones that have deceived and done a lot of unethical things, but they still managed to implement pretty solid PR tactics. And we can also learn from that to also be aware and be a bit more conscious of not buying any narrative and any story that we see out there, So that's what motivated me to create Unmasking the PR Spin every Thursday on my LinkedIn.
It's great. You should follow it, especially if you're a marketeer. It's really interesting to dive a bit deeper into the like how, like the psychology behind it.
And of
Yeah.
course, links to your LinkedIn and your PRLab will be
Yes.
in the show notes for everybody to go check out. That takes us to the last segment. Jolene, take it away.
Rapid fire. Yes. So 1 or 2 word answer, very short.
Yep.
Yeah. PR or brand?
Ooh, brand.
Says the owner of a PR agency. Love it. Network or content?
Network.
Buenos Aires or Amsterdam?
My gosh.
That is your heart.
They always hate this
Killing
one.
me.
They always hate this one.
Amsterdam.
All your friends are going to call you now.
Yeah.
A company that's nailing the PR game.
Oh my gosh, I have too many. There's a company in the hydrogen storage sector called H2MO. I do feel like they're doing a really good job with their PR.
Nice. Yeah, you already talked about it. We always ask for a book to recommend, but you actually already mentioned a book. Is there any other one? Maybe in your space or in the
PR space. I definitely there's a bunch that I actually really like. There is one actually that is about winning deals without pitching. I'm gonna share it with you because I don't remember exactly the name. I think it's the manifesto, the sales manifesto, I think it's called, and it has a really nice take on how you can, as an agency, get clients without giving all your knowledge away and spending hours and hours on building proposals. So I feel like if you have an agency, this book is great. So yeah, I will definitely recommend that one. Yeah.
Nice. Then one last one. Picked up by one major publication or 20 small publications?
20 small ones. Always.
Nice. That's it.
Great. Mati, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the people watching, listening?
No, I think, well, first I want to thank you both for having me. I really enjoy our chats in my office. And if you are thinking of doing PR ever, think about it in a way that it's a long-term plan, it's a long-term investment. The results are great, especially after you start getting that compound effect, so give it time.
And reach out to Mati.
Reach out. Always happy to chat.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.